Listen, I want you to know that. Here's my story. Life and favor. Thank you for bringing me out. You think you know, but let me tell it. Life and favor.
Welcome. Welcome to Breaking the Silence. It's a program where we discuss the issues of both sexual and domestic violence. Our mission is to inform and encourage, inspire, and empower women as they move from just surviving to thriving toward their purpose and destiny for their life. I'm your host, Monica May, and along with Gail Gardner, she's with RAFA, the Soul Care and Empowerment Institute here in Orlando. We have our guest via phone today. We're going to speak with Dr. Maxine Ruddock of Comprehensive Psychological and Assessment Services, or for short, CPAS, and it's here in Orlando as well. And we're wanting to approach Dr. Ruddock sexual abuse from another perspective, and that's from your perspective, from the licensed professional of mental health, specifically working in Christian counseling. How would you view sexual and domestic violence?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily relegate it to the realm of Christian counseling for domestic violence. It affects us all. Really, what I would do in terms of that is just the way in which you approach the individual in terms of how you want to conceptualize the ways that they should try to heal themselves. When I look at Christian counseling, I try to do a marriage of secular theory with biblical theory. And so in studying different types of counseling techniques, looking for the ones that are actually in line with what the Bible says, and those are the techniques that we utilize.
When we talk about counseling from a Christian perspective in terms of sexual or domestic violence, is there a difference in how willing patients, or victims I should say, are able to come to you? Do they open up more to you as a quote-unquote Christian counselor?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It depends on where the person is in terms of their comfort level and opening up. Now, if you do have an individual who is already pretty much firmly ensconced in their belief system, in the Christian belief system, and then they find a kindred spirit with myself, then there's a possibility that they'll open up more. Whereas someone who has not fully embraced that, it sometimes be a little bit timid in revealing whatever's going on based on what they think a Christian counselor would do. One of the things I do when I talk with women is to kind of explain to them that this is not any attempt on my part in any way, or nor should any Christian counselor. Their job should not be to convert you to Christianity, but to actually utilize the principles to enhance the healing process. So, for example, we do have a secular theory, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, that pretty much talks about the mind and the power of the mind and the thinking. And that's one of the things that a Christian principle is. Basically, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So just kind of tying that back to someone who is specifically looking for Christian counseling is very helpful for them, because there's such a, can be somewhat of a distrust between the two fields, Christianity and psychology. And so the goal, again, as a Christian counselor is to inform people that the Christian counseling really, a lot of the principles are really research supported and are actually in secular theory.
Well, let's look at domestic violence and sexual abuse and any type of abuse, period, because I'm sure you counsel in all as it relates to the church. Do you find today, new millennium, that people are more willing to speak with any type of a counselor from within inside the church?
I'm not sure if I heard that clearly.
Okay. As a Christian counselor or as a licensed professional counselor, do you find today that people in the church are having an easier time talking about abuse, whether it be domestic, whether it be sexual, any type of abuse?
No, not at all. And that actually can sometimes serve as a barrier to discussing domestic violence or any kind of physical abuse or kind of fault. One of the things that I found within the church is that it's almost taboo to talk about that type of abuse, or even to say that I still am having residual effects from that abuse, because sometimes it becomes a challenge to the faith. Are you being faithful enough? Is your faith strong enough? Are you following the principle, without taking into consideration that any type of injury, physical or mental, both of them have a period of healing. I mean, certainly we don't say to someone, you got kicked in the knee, but you're a Christian, so you really should not use a brace. However, oftentimes you'll find that because the mental is conceptualized in a different way, it's, well, you need to do the faith and you need to pray. So those, unfortunately, can serve sometimes the barrier to people discussing those types of incidents or even seeking treatment for it.
Dr. Rudock, we thank you. I have a question for you. You have a lot of experience, and I want you to talk about your professional experience regarding and where you're located, because you and I have a relationship, and I know that there's others that need to be aware of the services, the rec services that they can receive, and it's no longer a myth or a secret, and we can come out of the cloistered doors into the real world where we have to function. Can you tell us about your I guess you can give us your bio and what your experiences have been personally and professionally, and where you are located if someone wants to see you?
Well, I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and I have locations in Lake County and also in the Maitland area. We serve Seminole, Orange, Brevard, and Lake County. I've done a lot of work with women's issues and passion of mine for a while, and my dissertation actually focused on domestic violence and utilizing Carol Russell's investment model. Wanted to look more at objective factors that have a significant impact on women remaining in abusive situations. Again, one of the things that I kind of found when I was doing the research is that a lot of the research during that time had a lot of the interpersonal factors as the reasons why women were remaining, and I kind of found it somewhat offensive, because to me there was a subtle implication of blame being ascribed to the woman. If this is just your personality, this is who you are, and that's why you're there. And so I tried to take a different viewpoint in terms of looking at more objective factors, including socialization, because when you're in those types of relationships, you tend to be isolated, and your socialization centers around wherever the abuser allows you to socialize. So you'll lose that social contact if you leave. Then there's also the financial constraints that are imposed upon the person enduring the abuse, because even if they are working, there's usually limitations on when they can work, where they can work, and how money is utilized. So I wanted to focus on more objective factors and not so much on the interpersonal factors, simply because I wanted to avoid the blame being associated with the victim, to say, as opposed to the person who's perpetuating the abuse. Again, my passion is always in women's issues. I do a lot of relationship training. I teach women how to date, just because we tend to have a different viewpoint, not necessarily a bad viewpoint, but one that can sometimes put us at a disadvantage in terms of the way in which we approach it with a less objective eye. Another thing that we tend to work on also are marriages. Marriages, for me, again, can either be a place of wonderful enjoyment, or it can be a place of immense torture.
Immense doom,
so,
yeah.
Not wanting to ascribe blame to any one partner in marriages, we tend to try to focus on both, and just a viewpoint in terms of what they think it should be, making sure that they're both headed in the same direction.
Well, Dr. Rudock, let me ask you, how should a woman date?
How should a woman think?
How should a woman date?
Date? Oh, well, there you go. Now you've gotten all this passion in me. One of the things that I will tell women is, when you're going for a job, you just go into that job and say, hey, whatever you give me, I'll take it, and if you want to pay me, you can pay me, or if not. Or do you get a resume together? Do you do a self-assessment of what your skills are, and if there's a good fit with that job? Are there benefits to that job? Are there things that the job will detract from your life satisfaction, including the hours, including the tasks? So, my thing is, if you're going to go with such a purposeful manner or something like that, then when you're going into a dating situation, it's much more casual. It's very, we'll kind of figure it out. We'll see if it works. What I try to teach women is, in the same way that you're purposeful in job hunting, when you're dating, you have to become as purposeful in that process.
I think that is awesome advice, and I think
Yes.
that young girls need to take that as well. I often speak with the director of Young Fathers of Central Florida, and one question that girls often ask young boys, or they ask him about the young boys, is, how come Raekwon doesn't like me anymore? How come he never comes around? He doesn't love me. Well, he barely knows you. And in some of these instances with our young people, if you think older women are taking less time to really look at the men that they're dating, young girls are taking even less time. What do you think we can say to them?
Where do I what?
What do you think we can say to them to get them to slow down, teen girls?
Well, one of the things you have to do is first start to look at that sense of self-worth. I always say when I work with young girls also a lot, so one of the things I'll say to them is, tell me someone that you really, really, truly admire. And lots of times they'll find maybe a celebrity or someone like that. And I say, well, how do you think that person navigates their life? What do you think? Do you think that if you went to Beyonce and said, hey, listen, I can only take you to Burger King tomorrow, and on a coupon, do you think she'd say yes? And a lot of the girls would say no, and they're so offended at the thought that someone would offer that. And I would say, well, why wouldn't you be offended if that was offered to you?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good.
And then we go into the what do you utilize to describe self-worth? Is it money? Is it because she's famous? Or is it because of just the integral factor that you're a human being living and breathing, that you have value and you have worth?
Mm-hmm. And I always ask teen girls, why do you find that person appealing? Is it their celebrity? Is it their money? Is it what they say and sing about? And then you just got to break it down, because our kids have got to see reality for what it's worth,
I remember saying to a couple of things that was said to me. One was, you choose the person you're with for what you think of yourself. I was told that, and I was an adult by the time I got it, but I remember that. And another thing was, I was remembering two people cohabitating, and we're not married, and I was fussing about it and how I guess didn't understand why he treated me such a terrible way, because I remember being a young woman back then and not knowing any different. But I settled for this person. And I remember being told by a relative of theirs, why do you need to buy a container of milk when you can have the whole cow? So back those days, old folks had something to say and simplified some things but we have to teach at another level to this generation today. And I think that is well worth it, Doctor. I appreciate that.
We thank you very much.
It really is a matter of retraining the mind and kind of helping them to get a different grasp in terms of what their self-concept is.
Well, in a very brief way, because we're running out of time here, how does the healing process begin? How do we get a woman through the door even to want to talk about healing?
Well, one of the things, keep in mind that women tend to be very relational.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the presence of a supportive woman, neurotransmitters fire differently, our hormones are different. We actually will excrete more of a bonding hormone in the presence of the supportive woman. So for me, again, being a Christian counselor, we are created that way, to actually want to be in the presence of a supportive woman. Unfortunately, some societies and some social experiences that they've had cause women to say, well, absolutely not, a woman's place is the last place I want to be. However, if you notice, in the presence of a woman, there is an intuitive understanding of what you're feeling. The goal, again, is to explain that to them. And then, of course, depending on the level of trauma, there's a lot of patience in the process that's going to be necessary to rebuild that trust. And, one of the things that I focus on is let's make some concrete needs first, especially if this is someone who's had a lot of trauma. Let's get some concrete needs. One of the first things we need to do is build that trust.
Mm-hmm.
Build the trust, yes.
All right.
Yes.
Well, we thank you. How can we find you, Dr. Ruddock?
Well, you can call our number. We have two contact numbers, one for Lake County, and either one, because they ping back and forth to each other, at 352-508-5399, or you can call our Orange County office at 407-475-1605, or you can go to our website, and that's www.cpascounseling.com.
Okay.
All right.
We thank you, Dr. Maxine Ruddock of Comprehensive Psychological and Assessment Services, or CPAS. Thank you very much for your insight and all of the knowledge that you shared with us today.
We thank you for the late notice, also your patience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry?
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes, well, thank you guys for having me on. I very much appreciate it. Again, as I said, you inspired my passion, because this area is where my passion is.
All right. We are breaking the silence with our program on sexual and domestic violence, and we have more in store for you, so just make sure to always stay tuned.
I want you to know that. Here's my story. Life in favor. Thank you for bringing me out. You don't know. You think you know, but let me tell it. Life in favor. Up on me. God, thank you for your mercy.